So if you're from the South Suburbs, specifically Harvey, Illinois, shout out Harvey World, then I'm sure you've seen this structure. I'm going to put it right here. It's known as Bums or Hobo Castle. It used to be an old grain mill. Hold on, let me look that up. Sorry, it was a grain elevator mill. So basically, it's just like an elevator that transports grain and soil and things of that nature so that it can be put into bins and then shipped off on the railroad, which is why this structure sits right by the railroad. So that makes sense, right? And allegedly it was built in the early 1900s, like 1907. And I guess it burned down twice. So then they built it out of concrete to reinforce it so that it wouldn't burn down again. Then in 1962, they tried to like knock it down, or 1965. But it was so thick that they couldn't knock it down, which is why it's still sitting there. Now, I read this story on Facebook, and I don't know how true this is. I don't know how he's getting this information. I don't know if he just made this story completely up. But he says, the castle was constructed by Lord Frederick Bum in the 12th century, which is how it got its name. Most of the castle was destroyed during some great hobo war of 1343 between the Bum and Vagrant dynasty. Now, I've tried to do research on both of these dynasties, but nothing comes up. So I don't know if they just suppress it in history or it just don't exist. He continues, the Bums prevailed. However, with their castle destroyed, they began to roam the streets asking for spare change with the hopes that one day they will acquire the funding necessary to rebuild their grand palace, and with it rebuild the pride in their distinguished family name. Also, the term vagrant refers to basically what we call a bum today. Basically, in England and early colonial America, they use the term vagrant, which is basically like essentially what we call a homeless person now, where you would be penalized if you were just being idle and you were in poverty. Now, once again, I don't know if this man, where he's getting this information from, but I mean, it's kind of adding up. If there were a man named Frederick Bum, who lost his castle and then went out on the streets and started asking for change, back then he would have been called vagrant, and then eventually they probably just started renaming vagrant people as bums because they were naming them after this bum guy. I don't know. Anyway, just a little fun fact. I don't know if this historically is correct or not, but what I do know is ancient structures were constructed differently than they are today. So if they tried to knock that structure down in the 60s and they couldn't do it, and it was allegedly built in 1907, it's giving that castle structure probably is older than what we at least think it is. And if this story about it being constructed in the late 12th century, or technically early 12th century, so like 1343, that would check out. We have buildings all across the world that are still here standing today, i.e. the pyramids, the Roman Empire structure, castles, palaces that are still here today that are like hundreds, if not over 1,000 years old. And you can't just destroy it. So I don't know. Interesting.